Hi, it's Andrew Collins here, and it's that time of year again, the unpacking of the new book. In this case, my long-awaited tome, Denisovan Origins, co-authored with my good friend and colleague Greg Little. So this is a genuine unpacking. I picked up the package yesterday from a local store where it had been for about a week, and we're going to look at it and see what the book looks like. So only 5 years in the making, so a couple of other moments won't matter. So here we go. Yeah. Okay, right. I mean, I'm assuming it is Denisovan Origins. It could be Gobekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods, or something else, but I don't think I ordered any of them recently. Oh, no, here we are. Denisovan Origins. There we go, everybody. That's the cover of the book, and the cover illustration is by London artist Russell Hussain. Looks like it's come out incredibly well, and there's a quote on the front cover from Graham Hancock. He says, "A missing chapter in our knowledge of the emergence of civilization," and the subtitle is Hybrid Humans, Gobekli Tepe and the Genesis of the Giants of Ancient America. The publishers, Inner Traditions, like long titles because you get lots of buzzwords in, basically. And on the back we've got a quote from Sidney D. Kirkpatrick. I'll read you that. It says, "Collins and Little are the perfect team to address one of humanity's greatest enigmas. From giant skeletons to the mysterious mound builders of ancient America, this team assembles the lost pieces of the human timeline." Now, enough of the promotion. What's the book about, basically? Well, you've read my book, Gobekli Tepe, Genesis of the Gods. We looked at the origins of Gobekli Tepe, why it was constructed, and who might have been involved with it. I pinpointed a carrier culture, as we call them, known as the Swiderians, who stretched at the time of the last ice age right from Poland and the Carpathian Mountains right the way across to the Ural Mountains in the east, and they had elements of high technology and the right type of tool manufacture that was also appearing at the same time at Gobekli Tepe around 9,500 BC, and I suggested it was them. And since that time, what we've tried to do is take back the timeline still further, and what this did was to take us beyond the origins of the Swiderians, who basically come from the area of the Ural Mountains, where there was extreme high culture around 9,500, 9,600 BC. Just check out the so-called Shigir idol, and beyond that it seems as if the trail leads all the way to Siberia and Mongolia, and what was going on in Mongolia 20, 30, 40,000 years ago, first contact with Denisovans. And this is so timely because just this week in the news stories there have been news headlines about, did the first anatomical modern humans meet the Denisovans in Mongolia? And I would say absolutely this is correct. I mean, and what happened was it was almost like dropping a pebble into a pool of water, the pool of water being the ripe and ready modern human settlements and communities that were beginning to spring out all over the Eurasian continent, because a pulse, a wave went through them, carrying all of the advanced human behaviour, the high technology of the Denisovans west into Europe, initially as the so-called Eastern Gravatians, then as the Solutreans, and much later as the Swiderians. And they were like pulses and waves going through into Europe, and also obviously south into the Indian subcontinent, east into Eastern Asia, China in particular, and you know, and with that came the rise of what we call the Upper Paleolithic period, which essentially continues on through to the terrible cataclysm, which, you know, myself and my colleagues have spoken so much about, the so-called Younger Dryas impact event that really just stopped everything, really, and took literally thousands of years for us to pick up the, you know, the gauntlet again and continue the rise to civilization. But anyway, let's have a quick look at this. Now, as I said, it's obviously written by myself and Greg Little. I mean, previously Greg and I collaborated on a book called Path of Souls, and that's the other big thing in this book, because it's very clear that this, what we call the shamanic civilization that seemingly was founded amongst the first humans as early as 45,000 years ago, seemed to have its own cosmic geography, its own cosmic death journey, and that seemed to involve certain key things, certain key cosmological points of access into the sky world. One was a leap of faith into the constellation of Orion. This would act as a portal that would then carry the soul, whether it be the soul of the deceased, the soul of the shaman, along the Milky Way to the next portal point, which is where the Milky Way split in two. And here judgment was cast upon the soul. It was either allowed to enter into the sky world or afterlife, or it was cast into oblivion, or in some traditions it was allowed to reincarnate. But all of this seems to be a universal idea. Orion, Milky Way and Cygnus, and some kind of exit from the physical universe into the invisible realms that were perceived to exist in the upper world, and also quite clearly in the underworld or beneath world as well. And these were found not just in the Eurasian continent, but also in the Americas. And this is crucial because this brings in Greg's half of the book, because all of what I'm talking about ends up spilling out into North America and also South America as well. So Greg's half of the book, and we've written them both completely separately, is about the receiving of all this knowledge, and these migrational you know, peoples that are coming in either from Alaska, sorry, you know, Siberia through into Alaska, into North America, or coming directly across from island Southeast Asia through, you know, the islands down into South America and then up the coasts there. So, you know, there's this universal, what we call the Path of Souls death journey, and this is something also that Graham Hancock has talked about in his own book, America Before. And indeed, I mean, this book and Graham's book are compatriots of each other. They go hand in hand. It's almost like, I think we're almost starting a new breed, a new trend of books, which, you know, almost go beyond some of the old sacred cows that have existed in the past, and are looking at everything from archaeology to genetics to anthropology to folklore, to field research, and trying to come up with the true origins of human civilization. Yes, there's a lost civilization here, but I see it, and I know that Graham does as well, as more shamanic in nature. Yes, there may have been elements of high culture here and there around the world, flowering up here and there, but mostly it's about the mind. It's a civilization of the mind. And the Denisovans just, you know, was something else. I mean, they create the most beautiful jewellery. Look up the Denisovan bracelet if you haven't seen it. They created the first bone needles, which means they had tailored clothing. They created stone tools, which we end up using not just throughout the Paleolithic, but right the way down through the Paleolithic and down through into the Neolithic times. They kick-started it, and one of the key places involved with this was Siberia, down into Mongolia, south of Lake Baikal, and even in Tibet, or Tibetan Plateau, what is today northwest China, and something massive was going on, and you can trace that almost like a paper trail from there all the way to Gobekli Tepe. And obviously here's some great pictures of Gobekli Tepe, you know, just as it was before it was made into Turkish Stonehenge, obviously. And beyond that, what can I say? I mean, it's just a book which I'm so pleased and so happy that it's finally out and I can share it with you. I mean, the dedications, it's dedicated to Debbie Cartwright, a very good friend of mine. It says here, whose intuition, insights and sheer perseverance helped make this book what it is. Indeed, that's true. If it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't have got onto the Denisovans for years, to be honest. And it's also to the memory of Stan Goosh. He was one of the pioneers in the relationship between modern humans and Neanderthals, and what happened once we interbreeded, and how that affected our mindsets. And that's something that I've gone into to some degree, not just from the perspective of the Neanderthals but Denisovans as well, which brings us on to the Denisovan mindset. What was going on up here? Well, what I can tell you is that autism, I think, is the key. They had different minds to what we would perceive as the normal mind of a modern human. I think that this gave them savant-like qualities which allowed them to progress, to advance in certain directions, particularly to do with the interest and importance in cyclic time, particularly to do with the sun and the moon, and the bringing together of the sun and the moon in eclipse cycles, conjuring up certain key numbers like 54, 72, 108, 216, 432, and all of this to me has all of the elements of a person on the autistic spectrum. And although this may not have been the same as what we would class it as today, I think that somehow there's something going on here. So I'll go into that in detail and how that might have been brought together, and that's that really. I would say, you know, please go out and buy Denisovan Origins, Hybrid Humans, Gobekli Tepe, and the Genesis of the Giants of Ancient America by Andrew Collins, Greg Little, published by Inner Traditions and available now from all your favourite online bookstores. Thank you very much.